Hey there, my name is Craig, and welcome to the first video in my series, COVID in Film. Here, I'll be discussing the 2019 film Parasite, directed by Bong Joon-ho. In Bong Joon-ho's 2019 film Parasite, the director's camera enters the dangerous space of his characters' heads. In a 5-minute long sequence in the second half of the film, Bong utilizes the structure of a ghost story to frame the network of similarities and differences between three families, the Kims, Parks, and Ohs. So what I'm calling a scene here is actually part of a larger sequence, all of which takes place in the Park house, spanning from the Kim family's drinks in the living room at 56 minutes to their escape from the home, which is at 1 hour and 32 minutes. So that's a 35-minute sequence. The scene that I identified is built around the track Japaguri. After a struggle between the Kim and Oh families, this scene shows the return of the Park family to their home, which forces the others into hiding throughout the house. Although the characters are physically separated, Bong utilizes cinematography, lighting, set design, sound design, and editing to construct a scary and supernatural sequence that allows the audience to see from each character's perspective. Bong's formal choices create danger and horror both inside and outside of the film. The scene begins by establishing the centrality of the dark stairwell in the Park's kitchen. Beginning with a medium shot of Yeon Kyo, Chung Suk enters the frame and the camera tracks them to the table. With Yeon Kyo on the right and Chung Suk on the left, the frame is nearly centered on, below, the bowl of Japaguri, and dead center, the black rectangle which marks the upper end of the stairwell down to the basement. With Yeon Kyo's line of
여기 한우도 들었고
and Chung Suk's subsequent glance behind her to the black opening, the link between the food and the stairwell is reinforced, and the dialogue draws the viewer's attention to the meat in the Japaguri. In addition, the shot is fairly bright throughout the entire composition except for two places, the stairwell and the island area of the kitchen on the right. Instead of perfectly centering the stairwell, Bong includes the kitchen on the right, and the darkness of these two locations further compounds the link between the food and the stairs. This strange relationship turns sinister when we cut to a long shot looking down the stairwell at the motionless body of Moon Kwang. We hear Yeon Kyo ask,
고기 속까지 다 익힌 거다, 그지?
and Chung Suk responds.
믿으면 돼.
The Japaguri in the first shot, below the stairwell, becomes Moon Kwang's body in the next shot, literally at the bottom of the stairwell, as the editing and staging of these two shots reduce her to a pile of meat to be disposed of. For context, these two shots immediately follow the moment when Chung Suk kicks Moon Kwang down the stairwell. Now, Chung Suk is offered the literal meat, perhaps as a reward-like manifestation of her previous cruelty, as are Da Song and Dong Ik, but it is Yeon Kyo who ultimately eats it, and Ki Taek is tasked with disposing of the dead body. Then we enter the bunker for the second time in the film. Instead of continuing to push characters downward, the camera becomes trapped. While Ki Taek pulls Moon Kwang past the bunker entrance, the center of the frame remains pointed downward, this time on the next stairwell. Like so, Moon Kwang's journey, ever since being kicked by Chung Suk, is linear, as her body is seemingly pushed by the camera down into another stairwell. However, in the next shot when Ki Taek begins to close the sliding door, the camera makes an abrupt switch across the line. In this case, the line between Ki Taek and Moon Kwang, as well as the line separating the camera from the stairwell, now positioning the viewer next to Moon Kwang's head. From this perspective, the camera is also closed in. In this way, the director connects Moon Kwang with the viewer as we are both pulled downstairs involuntarily. While Kun Se's eerie song drifts in, the camera, static for the past 2.5 shots, unsteadily lurches up to show Ki Taek's reaction, facing downstairs. We cut before the door fully shuts, leaving the possibility of escape for ourselves and for Ki Taek. However, the next shot, centered on the bunker corridor, reveals him coming toward the camera. Here, the camera quickly pans to Kun Se, and Ki Taek enters close on the left side of the frame to ask.
뭐야?
Indeed, the viewer is asking the same thing, but Kun Se's aggressive tells us and Ki Taek to watch and listen. The last shot in the bunker looks up at Kun Se, in one of the darkest compositions of the scene, and where the upper end of the staircase is blocked by Kun Se's black-clothed, bowing body. The actions of Kun Se and his use of Morse code to communicate and send a desperate message to Da Song hint at the possibility of salvation from the depths, of being able to leave the bunker. But the out-of-reach and inaccessible garage staircase, blocked by the black form of Kunsei's upper body, indicates that escape is all but impossible, or that, if Kunsei were to escape to the top of that staircase, the outcome would be dark and sinister. Put another way, Kunsei's body blocks his own access to the top of the stairs. He can leave, but ultimately it's too risky, per the aforementioned loan sharks.
사채
It seems that instead of leaving, Kunsei takes pleasure in his simple acts of one-way communication, similar to the transmission coming from Bong's camera. We return back to the kitchen through Kunsei's electric communications. When Dong-ik reaches the top of the garage staircase, the camera has completed a cycle through the park home, fluidly linking all three families. However, this scene shows us that while the camera can move together with characters down the bunker stairwell, only the camera can move with the electrical currents of the light buttons up the garage staircase. That is, we are privileged to be able to escape the claustrophobic, dingy bunker, and in the next cut to see from the point of view of Yeon-kyo, who appears close at the left side of the frame. Bong is quick to remind us, though, that his film enables us to see from both sides, from below and from above, as the next shot places us directly next to Ki-taek. Kunsei's question here
뭘 그렇게 봐 민망하게
is seemingly also posed to Bong and to the audience. The cut before this line takes us from beside Yeon-kyo to Ki-taek, and from looking at Dong-ik to Kunsei. In the former shot, the audience is affixed to the lights, which Kunsei is turning on. Then we cut to the dingy basement directly below, and Kunsei doesn't wait for Ki-taek's or our answer before turning to Mr. Park's photos. Then we cut to the other side of Kunsei as we distance from Ki-taek's point of view. Another cut into his perspective, with insert shots of the wall, serves as a subtle answer to Kunsei's question. We are staring in order to better understand him, to get inside of his head, to literally see from his point of view. Bong's editing and camera work and his switching between above and below are thus underscored as the means which allow us to access the film from multiple angles. This idea is complicated in the final section. In this next section of the scene, the light show becomes a shadow play. Instead of fixating on the black stairwell again, a cut thrusts us into Chung-suk's point of view as Yeon-kyo asks her and us.
언니도 귀신 믿죠?
We cut to Ki-jung listening to Yeon-kyo as she looks down to the floor, then cut to a shaky shot from above of Ki-taek grabbing tape. Perhaps Ki-jung is also listening to what is going on below her. Another shot from above in the bunker precedes a cut back to the kitchen, when the camera pushes in on Yeon-kyo. The ghost story begins as, in a surreal move, the refrigerator door opens and we push in on a lit birthday cake on the floor. The kitchen lights dim slightly as realism is suspended, and we enter Da-song's experience on the night of his birthday some years ago. The first shot of this next duo includes Yeon-kyo's voiceover, as she continues to control the narrative.
그래서 요 앞에 앉아서 다송이가 케이크를 막 먹다가
And the slow-motion visual effects and exaggerated eating sound effects combine with the score to impose distance between the action and the audience. The next shot, however, sucks the audience into Da-song's point of view, as the score is replaced by deafening silence. Then, the escalating sound of rainfall, as the head of Kunsei peeks out above the basement stairwell. Kunsei is nearly centered in the frame, and looks toward the camera / Da-song. Yeon-kyo's scream ends the immersion, and the score re-enters as the rain becomes quieter.
소리에 막 내가 막 뛰어내려와 보니까
In this sequence, Kunsei's question returns.
뭘 그렇게 봐 민망하게
Why does Kunsei decide to stare at Da-song eating his cake, and what are his intentions? The answer may be the same. Kunsei wants to better understand Da-song's perspective. Instead of permitting this to take place, though, Yeon-kyo re-enters the scene with her scream, which forms a J-cut as we return to the kitchen conversation and out of the ghost story. Also, due to Da-song's seizure, Kunsei is unable to communicate with or relate to Da-song, and his unwanted act of staring becomes potentially deadly. The remainder of this scene includes 3 segments, which we can look at from this perspective of dangerous watching. By extension, this means that the desire to understand someone else's point of view or to fully understand them is dangerous. In the first segment, the camera is beside Chung-suk as we listen to the rest of Yeon-kyo's story. The second cuts between the points of view of Kitek and Kunsei, as the men, and we, try to understand their situations. One particularly interesting cut, where we see from Kunsei's perspective after he directly references people who live in semi-basements, has the camera seemingly confront Kitek. And for me, the third segment is the most interesting, as we first see the kitchen from the point of view of the basement stairwell. In this indirect reference to the ghost, we see from Kunsei's previous perspective, as he seemingly embodies the black stairwell entrance and continues to haunt the kitchen. Also, we end the scene coming up the staircase instead of going down, suggesting actions to come. A cut to Ki-jung places us back in her position of listening from afar, and then we cut to a gliding shot similar to the one to open the scene, but much closer, still with the black stairwell in the left center of the frame. As Yongkyo's face starts to cover the stairwell, the next track of the score enters, and we cut to an insert shot of the near-empty bowl from beside Yongkyo's head. So, if we assume that Ki-jung's previous glance downward allowed her to see into the bunker, these shots could take place from her point of view, as her gaze drifts through the kitchen and enviously, with her mother, glares down at the empty bowl. This last shot, when connected back to Moon Kwang, suggests the death of the former housekeeper and the consumption of her body and mind by the Park family. Moon Kwang, indeed, does die due to her brain trauma, and the dirty work is ultimately carried out by Chung Suk. In this way, Bong's camera work throughout the scene and the kaleidoscope of perspectives which he allows us to access form a similarly complex web of violence where we, as the viewer, encounter difficulties in deciding who to blame for, in this example, Moon Kwang's murder. And the danger of staring, shown by Kunsei, is underscored by Bong as we try to understand the characters in the film. Like so, and using Kitek's arm over his eyes as a visual metaphor, Parasite appears to tell us that not staring, or not watching the film, is one way for the viewer to detangle themselves from the movie's moral questions. Or we can enjoy the visual meal given to us by Bong, and face the emotional consequences of trying to get into his characters' heads. I chose to make my first video on Parasite, even though it was released several months before the start of COVID-19. Because it was a movie that really captivated me in late 2019 and early 2020. I watched it twice at my college town theater in November 2019, and each time I stayed to watch the entire credits, and I was the last person to leave the theater. I basically couldn't get up after the final scene or the final kill shot. Then I started working at that theater, and we screened a black and white release of Parasite in February 2020. That was a few weeks after I took a trip with some friends to Montreal, and I think I got COVID for the first time. The re-release of Parasite was about a week after the 2020 Oscars, one of the best memories from my freshman year of college, which I watched live with some friends. Each time Parasite won something, we all went crazy, and we absolutely lost it when it won Best Picture.
Parasite did it! It did it! Oh my god! Oh my...
And the score by Jung Jae-il was something I listened to a lot in 2020. It was kind of embarrassingly all over my Spotify top songs. Then I got the Parasite DVD and showed it to my dad and brother during the pandemic. So it played a big part in the last days of my pre-COVID life and at the start of the pandemic when it was sort of rushing toward us. And I think that Parasite taught me, or tried to teach me, a lot of the lessons that would go on to help me during the pandemic. To use this video essay as an example, I think Parasite taught me about the importance of my own self-preservation and the attention which I show myself. In a time during COVID, when we were concerned for the welfare of others, it was easy and sometimes encouraged to abandon yourself. But I think this is frequently a mistake, and to do so is dangerous. To give up yourself completely to someone else's from experience very scary, kind of like a ghost story. And the best way to stop the nightmare is to pay more attention to the way that you treat yourself, both inside and outside. Of course, as the movie shows us, there's a limit to this, and it's a delicate balance. These are, in short, the reasons why I wanted the first video of this series to be on Parasite. Thank you for watching.